Coast and all around the globe. Richie and John, truth telling's their code. News, laughs, and love with the righteous tone. Loud, proud, never alone. It's the Richie and John show, lighting up the way. Voices for justice, bold every day. Hope in their hearts, mics in their hands. Together we rise and together we stand. Richie and John, let's go.
From the Mutual Broadcasting System's Queer News Network, this is the Richie and John Show. News, entertainment, and lifestyle talk for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community and its allies. Here are your very well-adjusted, happy, and openly fabulous masters of ceremonies, Richie Roy and John McMullen.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Richie and John. It is Newsday Tuesday, when we bring you the latest and often not so greatest affecting our community, the LGBTQ plus community. I'm, of course, here with my co-host, John McMullen. John is in a spaghetti spider's nest of cables at the moment. What's going on, John?
It is. It's just a freaking mess. And you know, I remember the first time I walked into a TV station in Seattle when I was a wee tot, and a guy there said to me, "Oh, that's just spaghetti." And that's what I feel like I'm in, is a huge bowl of technical spaghetti here in Palm Springs right now, which is not a very comfortable feeling, you know, when it's 110 degrees outside either.
No, definitely not spaghetti weather. And I don't know what the weather is like in Russia at the moment, but there's someone there who moved there by choice to avoid people like us and now is facing the consequences.
You mean he left to escape Western perversions?
Yes, and specifically the LGBTQ, perverted freaks who are taking over America.
Oh, okay. Well, give us the details.
Yeah, so an American man uprooted his family, his wife and 3 children, and moved to Russia to escape what he called Western, quote, perversions, and is now facing being conscripted to go to the front lines of Russia's war with Ukraine. 46-year-old Derek Huffman, a former construction welder, relocated his family from the U.S. to Russia last year. He joined the Russian military to secure citizenship and attempt to earn social acceptance. Despite being promised a non-combat role, Huffman is actually being sent to the front with minimal training in a language he does not know. His wife, Deanna, says military officials misled the family. In a now deleted video, she says, quote, "He feels like he's being thrown to the wolves."
Poor him.
Yeah.
You know what? I guess this is one of those stories where you can say, well, it's all Greek to me.
Exactly. And the Huffman moved there under a program promoted by a pro-Russian American influencer. I will note that this program was a flop and only 2 families have moved there, one of them being the Huffmans. Russia has increasingly used the, quote, shared values rhetoric to attract conservative Westerners. Officials estimate that more than 1 million Russians have died in the war with Ukraine, which the Kremlin frames as a defense against Western influence. I don't feel bad for Mr. Huffman.
You know what this also reminds me of, Richie? It reminds me of all those people who work for the federal government who supported the current regime that is in office and who are crying foul because they're like, no, I voted for you and I lost my job. No, it wasn't supposed to work like that. I'm supposed to still have my job. Fire those other people, the ones who voted against you.
Right.
Yeah.
No, totally. Yeah. No, yeah. I voted for you to make life miserable for Black people, not me.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but I just love this story because this is someone who is so drinking the Kool-Aid that truly believed that America was so poisoned specifically by queer people that he wanted to move to Russia, that bastion of American values, Russia,
right,
to escape, the evils of gayness.
Well, they do have Trump-style values now. I mean,
right.
That's all in alignment, I think. You know what I hope? I hope that that President Zelensky actually shoots him himself.
I just think, that also the idea that given everything that, if you've read anything about, Russia and their thoughts about Westerners, did he really think that, their promise, like, oh, you're going to get a cush, office job, that they were going to really, at the Kremlin? Give me a break. He's raw meat. All I have to say is do your due diligence. Maybe you escaped gay people and instead you will probably die. Like, I guess that was a trade-off that you were willing to make. Yeah.
And hey, if your family ends up dying along the route with you, so be it. So be it.
So we moving back onto our shores.
Let's set up my old stomping grounds.
Yeah. So we recently, the Trump administration has shut down funding for the LGBTQ plus youth suicide crisis line, forcing it to abruptly shut down. And obviously that is just an inhumane, horrible thing to do. I imagine that half a round of golf that Trump takes every weekend on the federal dime could probably fund that youth suicide crisis line for 10 years.
Yeah, for years.
So this is not about money. This is literally about, we want you to know, this government wants you to know that we would prefer for you to die, actually, than to provide a basic service. Oregon Congresswoman Andrea Salinas is saying that's bullshit and is calling on lawmakers to restore funding for the crisis line. The line was part of the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline and served, get this, more than 2,000 young people a day. Salinas, who has a lesbian daughter, says specialized care is vital and cutting the program puts lives at risk. And I have to say that, I think that that's really true, because the things that gay, lesbian, trans, bi youth go through, those are specific things. Trans youth especially are dealing with stuff that if you're just calling the average line, you might get, for instance, a very well-intentioned counselor who is maybe of an evangelical background, who's from the South. And I'm not saying they're a bad person, but they are not equipped to speak to the specific needs of an LGBTQ plus youth who is in.
Wait, are you telling me that not giving the advice of just reach out your hand and touch the face of Jesus is not going to do it?
It's probably not.
Not going to save them?
I don't think so. So speaking
here's what I'm concerned about right now. I think it's atrocious that this administration, this regime, I hate calling it an administration. It is a regime, and it is a nasty one, but that they have done this, and we should know that for 4 years, we cannot expect anything but crap like this to happen. So what we need to do is we need to be proactive, not in trying to twist their arm into giving it back, because that's just not going to happen with programs like this. It's not. There are some things where they have had to have a reversal of their stupidity because of other things that have put pressure points in harm's way for them. However, what I think we need to be doing is talking to people like the former Mrs. Bezos and other people who have been extremely generous with their billions, and talk with them about providing private funding for programs like this that are life-saving programs. We really need somebody who is working on development to do development for organizations and resources that help save lives in our community until we can get some common sense back into the government. Yeah,
it's a great point. The real tragedy, though, here is that, let's say that even happened. Let's say that a philanthropist just decided to make money no object for this issue. 988, this is a nationwide easy, it is a 3 number. It's like 911. And it has this sort of, it's easy. Everyone learns about it. And so, it takes because if someone's marginal, if someone's a trans youth and they're on the margins, they probably have heard 988. It's around. The jump is that, if there's a number that they can call, they need to know it exists. And so that's the other piece,
Right.
is we could have the best suicide and crisis line for LGBTQ youth, but they have to know how to get to it. So that's why this one's really so horrible, is because, the whole idea of 988 was to make it easy for people in mental health crises to get the help they need. And they specifically are targeting our community and saying, oh, but not you, actually.
Well, I do believe that the president and the people in this regime do not have control over that. I mean, other than the fact that it might be an FCC mandated service, it would seem to me that the private sector, the telephone companies, could make a decision to make this 3-digit lifeline happen.
Right. I mean, we'd have to find out kind of that gets into sort of like the nitty gritty, but yes, that would be great. But in the meantime, I think Oregon Congresswoman Andrea Salinas is making the right move by at least calling attention to this. I agree with you. I think that, we're in a moment where this regime, as you call it brightly, they are completely uninterested and don't care about public opinion. They're so ideological that they will do something very unpopular, knowing that people will hate it and that will hate them, and they don't give a shit because they're accomplishing an ideological goal. So, like things that might be brought, like PBS, defunding PBS. People love Sesame Street, and people are upset that they not only defunded PBS and NPR, but are attempting these clawbacks to get money back from them that was previously appropriated and spent. No one wants to see Big Bird, in the poorhouse trying to share a trash can with Oscar on Sesame Street. No one wants to see that, but they don't care because they're getting the win that they wanted ideologically. And so for that reason, all of the anger and opprobrium about basically telling gay youth to die, they don't care. It won't move the needle for them. And it won't for any of the Republicans in Congress either, because they're in lockstep and they're afraid of this autocrat. So I think that Andrea Salinas is doing what you can do in this moment with her power, which is to make a note and put people on notice that this is not right.
Yeah. Richie, several years ago now, I don't know, it's been probably 10, maybe 12 years ago. I guess it's maybe been about 12 years ago. I was recruited by a company in Indianapolis, a large media company, owns stations all over the country, but their flagship station, in fact, was the station that the now former vice president, the one that the current president tried to have a mob kill on January 6th. That's where he was a talk show host at that radio station, WIBC, in Indianapolis. And I was told by the person who actually set me up for going to interview and have a conversation with these people about this job is something that I still haven't been able to shake. And I think about it a lot whenever I think about Indy, because Indy's kind of a cool place. I actually liked it there for a Midwest market. It was not a terrible place, but when he told me that the N-word is still a frequently used moniker there, it really made me think twice and 8 times about whether or not I wanted to work and live in an environment like that. And he had shared this with me because his own daughter had gone to Indianapolis to go to university. And anyway, I see that Indianapolis is back in our headlines this week. It is the location of a church which is facing national backlash after a sermon called for the execution of LGBTQ people. How sweet. The remarks were delivered during a June 29th men's preaching event at Sure Foundation Baptist Church. Lay preacher Stephen Falco told congregants that gay people should, quote, blow yourself in the back of the head. Is he talking about like pleasuring yourself? I don't think so. Probably not. Anyway, a church leader, Justin Zhang, defended the message, citing a literal interpretation of the Bible. "I will not apologize for preaching the word of God," he wrote on Facebook. The video was removed by YouTube for violating its terms of service, but clips have resurfaced on local radio. Civil rights and LGBTQ plus advocacy groups have condemned the rhetoric as hateful and dangerous, of course. The concerned clergy of Indianapolis called the sermon pastorally dangerous. Equality Indiana warned that it could incite violence. The church is unaffiliated with major denominations, but shares ties to the New Independent Fundamental Baptist movement, known for extreme anti-LGBTQ plus views.
Yeah.
You know who I like to turn to in moments like this, and I wish we could have him here and talk with us. A good friend was somebody who was a good friend of mine several years ago. I haven't seen or spoken to him. In fact, I'm not even sure if he's still alive. But he was the founder of the Universal Fellowship of Metropolitan Community Churches. Mm-hmm. And he used to be a Baptist minister and do those tent revivals down in the South. His name is Troy Perry. I asked Troy the first time I interviewed him, so what do you think's the real deal here? I mean, about, God decreeing that gays are wrong and that we're just terrible, awful miscreants. And he said, John, anybody who'd like to argue with me can feel free to bring it on. But my perspective, and through all of the theology work that I've done, is that God didn't make any mistakes. So you are not a mistake, and you were created exactly as he intended. So I'm always blown away by these people. I mean, I live in a family filled with people who attend church every Sunday. My mom is very much a churchgoer, and she has never uttered a word of it being wrong or against God's will. Never have I ever been present for a sermon in a church growing up in the Catholic Church where that was the case. Of course, I had 2 gay priests, as I would come to find out years later, one of whom ended up living in my house. So, it's weird circumstances, but, the deal is people who really, truly, I think, believe in their faith know that they are not an abomination, and that these people who like to use the Bible to brutalize people are full of shit.
Yeah, I had a couple thoughts on this story. One is, I was like, am I Rip Van Winkle? Like, did I fall asleep in the 90s and wake up in 2025 and it's like still the 90s? Like these like weird little churches that just like call for execution of gay people. It's like, this has been around, like, it pops up every now and again. It just reminds you that these kind of nut jobs exist. And especially the other thing that's so funny about this to me is that, I did a little like looking, and this is what they call a KJV church, which means that they believe that the King James version of the Bible is the literal, like God, like came down from the clouds with a fountain pen and wrote it down. And that is like that's actually the real deal word of God. Yeah. Like God, did text to speech, and it ended up being the King James version. Hilariously enough,
King James version of the Bible, that was the crap that was preached by our friend Pat Robertson as well. And I know this because my maternal grandfather sent him way too much money.
Right. But the funny thing, the reason why I laugh about this is because the King James Bible, which was kind of like the first, translation into vernacular English, was indeed commissioned by King James, who is famously a like big flaming homo. So it's like the book that you think is like the basis, the bedrock, the alpha and omega of your belief is literally like a translation commissioned by a homo for you. Right. That's just like the funniest little piece of it to me is it's like, how dumb are you? Did you even like Wikipedia King James? Like, come on.
Yeah, he was pretty much a Fruit Loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on the tip of conservative Christians, this is a story I actually really like. As someone who loves home improvement shows, I used to spend way too much time watching HGTV, I must say. I freely admit that it was like an addiction. And I did watch a fair amount of Fixer Upper, which was a show that featured Chip and Joanna Gaines, who were based in Waco, Texas, and they basically kind of like took houses and prettied them up. I mean, they're the reason why people put shiplap on everything. They became, kind of this cliche joke, but, they still have this immense kind of power culturally for a lot of people. And they actually have their own network, ultimately, is called the Magnolia Network. And people love them. And especially people kind of in the Christian world, because Chip and Joanna Gaines are Christian aligned. Obviously, they're in Waco. And so I always thought it was curious, or not curious, but notable that like Fixer Upper, the show, unlike all the other shows on HGTV, had like no gay people on it. And first of all, I'm like, well, gays don't want to go to Waco, which is understandable. But second of all, I was like, that's a choice. They're totally making a choice. But interestingly, Magnolia Network is doing a new show called Back to the Frontier. And it follows 3 families living as 1880s homesteaders. And one of those families is Jason and Joe, Joe, not Jo, Hannah Riggs and their twin sons, gays. That casting has prompted outrage from the group 1 Million Moms. We've heard from them before, which says that featuring same-sex parents, quote, glorifies sin. They're calling for a boycott of the new show, which is produced by Chip and Joanna Gaines. In response to the backlash, Chip Gaines urged Christians to, quote, talk, ask questions, and listen, calling out what he sees as judgmental attitudes within modern Christian culture. That only deepened criticism from the American Family Association, which likened the inclusion of a gay couple to hypothetically casting racists. It's a weird one. 1 Million Moms has launched a petition with far fewer than 1 million signatures, actually about 5,000 so far, accusing the show of pushing a, quote, liberal woke agenda. Magnolia Network has not responded publicly. What do you think about this?
Well, I've been following it for a few weeks now. This story has gained a little bit of my interest. Unlike you, I really have not watched a lot of those kinds of programs. I have a friend who actually hosted one of them on one of the cable networks, my friend Bob Guinea, and I don't know. To me, you get caught up in these things, and it's kind of like watching hoarders. It's like crack cocaine for your eyes, watching these people do their thing and being held through the next commercial break and through the next commercial break. I guess it's an interesting idea, the concept of having these people live in the 1800s style and not having electricity and running water and having to go to the outhouse to do their business or whatever. But in terms of the fact that all these people are blowing up over the fact that you have a gay family in this, and they consider it to be an abomination again on their senses, I would like to go back to something that I want to close the show today. I don't really want to blow my wad right now, but I really want to close our program tonight before we get out of here on talking about media consumption choices. If you don't like it, there's only 9,000 other channels out there. Turn the goddamn dial. Seriously. Rather than bitch about this program, you're not going to make everything that has a gay theme or tells a story of some aspect of, I get tired of seeing do-gooders on TV. I want to see people who have some diversity to their life reflected. I want to see society reflected on television and in movies. So this whole thing about them drawing some sort of a analogy to the fact that they should maybe cast racists because they cast homosexuals is absurd.
Yeah.
And has America lost its fucking head? I mean, really?
I
should just do what you do. I should just fucking huck the TV out the goddamn door. I mean, in all fairness, for people who might be newer viewers or listeners to our program, you're not exactly the biggest consumer of shit that comes in on the idiot box, and you might be the brightest person of all.
I honestly don't watch. I haven't turned my TV on in probably 2 years. And when I do kind of like walk by a TV, also, I mean, I know that there's amazing things to watch on HBO or Netflix or whatever. But when I happen to like encounter specifically like linear television in 2025, it is so moribund. It's like the ads are so janky because, you know, it's not what it used to be. And so, you know, these shows, the ads in between are for, you know, scams, like some gold scam or some like really geriatric thing, you know, like a fold up chair that you put in your shower. You know, it all feels kind of like desperate and dying. And so I hear what you're saying. And it also just like these moments happen. It's probably not better ways to spend your time. I guess you're right. Yeah.
I know this is going to piss off an element of our audience, but I've been doing that a lot this week. I hate reality television. I do. I always have. Like the only reality TV show that I kind of sort of enjoyed watching was that one that CBS had, The Amazing Race. And, you know, where these people have these contests and they have to go do all these interesting, you know, things all around the world. And to me, that was kind of interesting because you saw a lot of interesting, diverse things happen in the course of that show. But shows like Survivor and, you know, and oh my God, lo and behold, RuPaul's Drag Race. Oh my God. Make me vomit. You want to make me vomit? Make me have to sit in front of a TV and watch that shit. I mean, I have lots of friends who watch it and who swear by it and all that. And I admit there was a period of time when I got hooked into reality television for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years watching The Real World and Road Rules on MTV. And finally, I broke that bad habit. But I just can't stand it because what is it built on? It's built on drama. It's built on conflict. It's built on the stuff that tears people apart rather than bringing them together. And here's just one more example of that with, you know, what 1 Million Moms is up to with this show that has these different families living in situations that simulate having to live in the late 1800s. Like, okay, I guess it's another concept, but, you know, again, it just divides people, which is exactly how we have gotten to where we are today in this country, in this world. It's going on all over the world. It's not unique to the United States. So, you know, we have created the end of society or the ingredients to end society.
So I generally feel similarly. I used to watch a lot of reality TV and I don't watch any TV anymore, but especially not that. I will say that it's not a foregone conclusion that that's how it should be, because I will give a counterexample, which is if you've ever watched the Great British Bake Show or Bake Off, that show, which is a competition show. I guess it's not a reality show; it's a competition show.
Yeah, I'm going to say that I can't personally say that I don't watch any of those competition shows because I do watch America's Got Talent. I watched for many years American Idol. I have watched the baking show. I've watched the show that they do actually not too far from you at the Corning Institute, the glass blowing show that is on, I think, Netflix or one of those services now. So some of those shows I do like, and I don't consider them the same thing, even though they have some drama within them too. But to me, it's not exactly the same. And it's not like scripted television, which the producers find a way to get the moments that they want out of that stuff and come up with a finished product that they want, not necessarily how it might really happen.
For sure. Yeah. And I guess, the Great British Bake Off is more of a competition show, which those shows do have an element of talent as opposed to just kind of freeform personality. But the thing I like about that show, to kind of go back to this Magnolia Network thing, is it shows, and I think very pointedly shows Britain in its most diverse. You see old pensioners, these old, spindly white men who want to bake, crackers. And then you have, sort of young, Nigerian immigrant families, and they're all baking. And the thing is, even though they are competing for, Star Baker and whatever, they help each other a lot. There's generally a sense that they all like each other for the most part. And then you get these little glimpses, these slices of life, because they record the show like on the weekends. And so the people do the show and then they go back to their normal life and then come back on the weekends to shoot the show. And they shoot these little pieces, these little clips where you see them in their little houses and doing their day jobs. And it just, I think in a kind of modeling way, it just models the reality that like Britain is a place where people of different backgrounds, and a lot of gay people on it too, by the way, can all be under the literal same tent, having fun, making cakes and breads and stuff together. Like, I think that show is not only just about talent, but I think it is pointedly also about a demonstration of sort of the best that sort of diversity of all kinds can bring you. Yeah. My significant other and I have watched that show over the last couple of years, and it to me, it's an enjoyable viewing experience. Yeah. So we have a story that is a good story. It was a bad story. Now it's a little less of a bad story out of the White House. The White House is backing off of a controversial proposal to slash funding for a global HIV/AIDS program that's credited with saving millions of lives. A $400 million cut to PEPFAR, the president's emergency plan for AIDS relief, has been dropped from a $9.4 billion rescissions package under consideration in the Senate. The Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Vought confirmed the shift ahead of Tuesday's procedural vote. Senate Republicans, including Appropriations Chair Susan Collins and Senator Lisa Murkowski, had raised concerns about the proposed cut. They love raising concerns, by the way, those two. And then being shocked and clutching their pearls when the lies they were told to vote a certain way are shown as lies. Classic for Collins and Murkowski. Launched by President George W. Bush, famous liberal, in 2003, PEPFAR funds HIV treatment and prevention efforts worldwide, particularly in Africa and the Caribbean. Critics of the cut called it both harmful and politically motivated. The bill, now trimmed to $9 billion, advances with Vice President J.D. Vance casting the tie-breaking vote. Lawmakers have until Friday at midnight to finalize the package and send it to the president's desk. So PEPFAR was saved from a drastic cut. Yeah, is definitely good news, but not on account of anything that they did. They as in the regime itself did. I guess there are some things where they can be pressured because there's other things at play, and they need cooperation within their own caucus to get things done. But you're right when you talk about those two bitches, and that's what they are, just a couple of lapdogs who always end up doing generally the wrong thing for the wrong reasons, and after indicating that they're going to do the right thing, and then they never usually follow through on that. And Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins are really two stupid cunts. That's my take on it, because I'm so tired of hearing that they're expected to do one thing, and then it always turns out that they did something else, the wrong thing. They're like the classic example of like the fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Because they've been fooled about 7,000 times at this point. Yeah. And they always act shocked, like literally completely, as if they were born yesterday. Like they told me that they were going to do it a different way when I voted. Yeah. Give me a break. Why their constituents continue to return them to the United States Senate is beyond me. I just figure it's because in both of those states they come from, there is massive amounts of pot consumption, and those people are so stoned they just don't care. Maybe I mean, in Alaska, it could be that their brain still hasn't thawed. Part of it though with them, and I actually think it's them, and the other person that it kind of like makes me think about, who is sort of a similar type of vibe, was Joe Manchin. Yeah. And I really think that their constituents like the fact that they kind of act independent and like waffle around, because it gets a lot of drama and it puts them in the spotlight and it makes their state seem important for a moment, as if they're this determinative factor. Joe Manchin, who essentially was just a Republican, but a Democrat in name only, would basically like go and hem and haw and like search his soul and on anything that was kind of important. There was like a divide between Republicans and Democrats, and he would act, like he really had to think super hard about it for like 2 weeks, and everyone was like begging him. I'm sure they took him out to dinner, sent him chocolate, whatever. And then in the end, he like almost always did the wrong thing. Same thing with Collins and Murkowski, but on the opposite side, they're like, Republicans who then sort of act like, well, I'm reasonable. I don't think we should like literally send every person of color to death in a death camp. That sounds wrong to me. But but the administration promised me that they won't do it. So I'm going to vote for the bill that has the funding for that in it. So stupid.
It is. And, with
though.
Joe Manchin, the thing that always drove me nuts was, especially on issues around whether or not they were going to support Obamacare, those kinds of issues, because if any state benefits from a lot of the stuff that comes out of the Affordable Care Act, it is definitely West Virginia. Mm-hmm. West Virginia has probably per capita the largest issue with opiate abuse in America. And I mean, it is staggering, the percentage of people who are on opiates or who have been or become addicted to them and have had their lives just completely decimated by that crisis in this country. And, there have been times, if it weren't for the fact that I think of myself as being a fairly good humanitarian and would not want to see people truly be hurt or left to die, I would just say, fine, strip them of it all. Let them just realize what's going to happen when it's gone. But now we're in a situation where the whole country gets to do that because of Medicaid being threatened and things like that. So everybody is going to learn. The funny thing is that they've set it up on such a timetable that you're not going to learn until it's too late, when that motherfucker is gone, because a lot of these things don't happen for 3 years.
Right. They were very canny about that. All the misery, I mean, not all the misery, but a lot of the true misery is specifically designed to kick in right after the midterms.
And kick in when there's no doubt going to be a change. If you look at how things are going in America, when there will be a change in who's in power, and at that point in time, the boomerang is going to come back and hit American people when the other party has control.
Right.
Most likely.
Yeah,
It will look terrible for the Democrats.
Well, and the Democrats won't be able to do anything about it. If they are in control, the Democrats won't be able to do anything about it because of all the structural roadblocks that Republicans have put in place for forever. Yeah. The Democrats can never get anything done because of rat fucking. Yeah. So yeah, Democrats will be in control. Everything is going to get shredded. The social safety net will be shredded, and Democrats will be powerless to do anything about it. And people will hate Democrats even more than they already do. They planned it. Yeah, exactly. It's just like a foregone conclusion.
Well, we have some good news. So some people might not consider it that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, on this story, I was going to say, so for those who don't know, I am not very technologically savvy. John is really the brains behind this operation, and he puts it all together. So I'm going to ask John on the air to put a little clip of the song from The Wizard of Oz, Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead, before this next segment, because this is a story that, you're not supposed to tap dance on, on a grave. I have my patent leather tap shoes on, and I am doing the shuffle off to Buffalo today because Edwin Fulner, co-founder of the influential conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation, has died. So the organization announced his passing last Friday, did not share a cause of death. I think he died from being evil. Fulner helped launch the Heritage Foundation in 1973 with the goal of reshaping American conservatism. Under his leadership, the group became a powerful force in Republican policymaking, known for its policy briefs and early influence on the Reagan administration. Fulner served as president until 2013 and briefly returned in 2018. More recently, Heritage has drawn national attention for its major role in shaping Project 2025, the sweeping conservative policy agenda for a second Trump administration that we told everyone to pay attention to, and everyone did not. And surprise, surprise, they are literally going through that book and checking the boxes. So thanks, Heritage Foundation, for that little, fascist book. The group has long opposed LGBTQ rights and social protections and has backed measures against marriage equality, transgender health care, and anti-discrimination laws, and generally has advocated for making life as miserable for as many people as possible. That's somehow their vibe. Fulner once described Heritage's mission as promoting, quote, free enterprise, limited government, and traditional values. Just on those points, none of those things are actually in practice in the current administration, which is putting, Project 2025 into effect. Free enterprise, you see things like the current president telling major athletics teams that if they don't change their name back to racist names, that he will stymie their attempts to move from one city to another, telling companies like Walmart to price fix as opposed to letting tariffs make prices rise for consumers, because that's what would naturally happen, because consumers do pay for tariffs, not the other country. And so we don't have free enterprise because they are having a very heavy hand on that, on DEI, you name it. Limited government, we have now a huge budget for the ICE Gestapo to black helicopter their way into any blue city that they care to and wear masks and imprison anyone that they want to with no sort of due process. So limited government, nope, we don't have that either. And traditional values, the president is someone who is literally someone who has been adjudged to have, been a sexual assaulter. And if you go down the list of on the daily, there are folks up and down the GOP ranks that are always it's like a daily thing. Some, random GOP chair in a county who is trafficking in child porn or abusing a spouse, or you name it. So all of those heritage missions, well, I guess they failed because their current standard bearer, their administration, doesn't do any of those things. So this guy, Edwin Fulner, rest in not peace, has left behind a lasting and controversial legacy in American politics. And if that's what he really was hoping to do, he failed and he died a failure.
And look, if there's any truth to his belief system, and most of those people who supported he and his work, he got the express elevator down when he checked out. He is water skiing in the fiery lakes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can tell you, I've been familiar with the Heritage Foundation and its work since I was a very young man, because they have been and have had their hooks into my industry, into the radio industry, into the executives who run the rock and roll and the hip hop and the country and Western and the, you name it format of radio stations that you like, not just the news talk ones where they have their nasty bullshit spewing out of the speakers from. The Heritage Foundation has been very linked into the broadcast industry and the people who make the decisions in that industry for many decades. And I can tell you, I have made many trips into Washington, D.C. and driven from DuPont Circle out to the Northeast Corridor to hang out at the Eagle and some other fine establishments in Washington, D.C. when I've gone to the Capitol, and driven by, on many occasions, driven by that office. And I tried my hardest every time I go by there to figure out how it was that little girl was able to use her eyes to turn or set a place on fire in that movie. And I just didn't have the fire starter skills. But if I did, that place would have been well roasted by now. It just made me sick every time I saw that place, every time I saw an ad from them in one of our trade papers and that kind of thing. All I can say is good riddance. And this motherfucker is burning in hell, which is exactly where he and his ilk and all these mega motherfuckers belong.
You know, I'm trying to think.
They don't promote free enterprise.
They don't promote any of that. I'm just thinking like what? Because I think honestly, the kind of like the lake, the eternal lake of fire and like the brimstone and stuff. That sounds pretty bad. But I would really like if I think that person's hell is that he's forever living in like a public library in Portland, you know, and he's just every 5 minutes, like patchouli blasts him. And he's just, you know, he's surrounded by just this retinue of multicultural trans children, you know, singing songs in other languages. And all of the food is ethnic. You know, and I feel like that, you know, that's what I want. That's what I want for this person. I want him to live what would be my heaven, because it would be his hell. So, you know, enjoy the Ethiopian food served to you by that trans waiter down in your hell, mister. And anyway, good riddance. And with that little story at the end, we are bringing Newsday Tuesday to a close. John,
I do have one more thing I wanted to opine about, and I figured you might want to too, even though you're not a very active television viewer. You certainly have been following the headlines of what's going on in terms of this regime's threat to the mass media in our country. And to what has happened first with ABC News and then with CBS News. And of course, now with CBS's entertainment division, because Paramount would like to actually conclude a merger with another company. And the only way that that's going to make it through the Federal Trade Commission and the Department of Justice is with the blessing of his royal asshole. And everybody, I think, has pretty much seen all the stories and coverage over the last week or so of what's going on with regards to Stephen Colbert. And his show is coming to an end at the end of this next season on CBS. It's not just that he's being moved on and find somebody else to do the program. CBS is abandoning the 11:30 entertainment portion of its programming. And it's interesting because I have been reading a lot of responses from both sides on social media platforms. And it is extremely disturbing to think that he has the impact that he has had, to see that reporters are pushed off of news broadcasts, that entertainment personalities are pushed out of their shows because they have been critical of him. He is just reflecting the majority, the massive majority of the American people and their attitudes towards the shenanigans that have been going on in this country. And I would remind you that the same thing that I said to a significant number of people in one particular forum this past week, which is that a lot of people think that Fox News has a huge impact in America. And the fact of the matter is that it really doesn't. They have convinced you that they do. It might blow your mind to know that less than a few 100,000 people a day watch a huge and hugely known television network known as MTV. I mean, in a country of 350 million people, you have only a few 100,000 people in a good day, and usually only a little over 100,000 on a typical day who watch a service like that. I will remind you that the Fox News channel only reaches about a cumulative massive total audience that is between 3 and 4 million people. That is really insubstantial in this country. And while it's fun to poke fun and give them hell at Fox, they're not as influential as a lot of people think that they are. And I have not watched an awful lot of CBS programming for a long time, but that's mostly because I just don't find most of the stuff that they have on the air all that interesting to me. I've not been very happy with them since they pushed Dan Rather out years ago as the anchor of the CBS Evening News. I highly recommend that people start, if they haven't already, going and subscribing to sources of entertainment and information that they really believe in and that they trust in and that they are entertained by, as these people are now able to go out and really, for all intents and purposes, start their own networks, start their own production companies, and do their distribution themselves. To me, that is the most beautiful thing that has come out of the advent of the internet. And it's the same thing that allows Richie and I to hang out here with you and to do this program. I mean, if we'd have thought about doing this 20 years ago, people would laugh at us. But the fact of the matter is that you can choose who you're going to consume media and entertainment from. Most of our friends do. And you don't have to watch a network or its affiliates that support the elimination of voices that you appreciate and that you support. Stephen Colbert was, much like Jon Stewart, his friend and former colleague, and, other people who are in this industry who are, in my opinion, fearless, that they're not afraid to go out and to use the platforms they've been given to influence people. I'm waiting for Jimmy Kimmel, I'm sure, will be the next victim of this. And it's a shame. But what am I going to do? I'm not going to watch whatever they put in after that. I'm just not going to watch them. And I guarantee you that just like when, some other business fucks you around and fucks with your life, or tells you that you don't matter to them as a consumer, TV networks, TV stations, radio stations, even online streaming services, I'm telling you, they rely on you. And they are held accountable by Wall Street. And if there's one thing I learned working at Sirius Satellite Radio for 5 years, it was that there's this thing that they absolutely hate having to talk about at their quarterly calls with Wall Street. And that is churn. They can't stand losing audience. They will go to great lengths. Even if they've raised their prices, they will give you discounts that you can't believe. Do you think I pay $29 or $30 some odd dollars a month for my satellite radio service? Hell no, I pay $5 a month. I'd never pay more than that. And it's because they can't afford to lose me. You need to think about the media choices that you make and know that if you're watching services that are basically saying F you, you can say F you back. Go somewhere else. There's so many choices out there in entertainment and news, just so many choices where you can choose who you're going to spend your time and your resources with. So please use that power. You have that power. And I guarantee you, if you think one person's not going to make a difference, it only takes one person doing this, 20,000 times over. And they're like, holy shit. What are we going to do? They're going to have to change their ways. We can force these mass media companies to get their shit together. That's all I really wanted to say about that. But I'm sad to see Stephen. I don't watch his show all the time, but when I do, I always laugh and I always agree. Not because I feel like I have to, but because he's reflecting what I want to say or what I think. And it's the least that I can do to stand up and say, we got to back these people.
This is the moment we're in. But everyone, you've made a media choice tonight or today or this afternoon by listening to our show, and we appreciate that. We'd like to think that we are outside of that sort of direct command and control. And like John said, for good reason, because we are not beholden to anyone other than ourselves. And so thank you for listening. If you want to weigh in on any of the things we've talked about today or suggest things for us to talk about in the future, the best way to reach us is info@richieandjohn.com, info@RICHIEANDJOHN.com. Our website, richieandjohn.com, is another great place to go. And we will be back at you next time with more fascinating news about our community. And until then, John, have a great week.
You too, Richie.
Richie and John is a production of the Mutual Broadcasting System. Opinions expressed are those of the hosts and their guests. If you have a problem with it, bugger off.
Freedom and equality, let it be clear. Being who you are, fun, frisky, and out loud queer. From Mutual Broadcasting, we're breaking free. Living our truth, just you listen and see. Living our truth, just you listen and see.